Hi, everybody. It's Jodie Thornton here. We are just about to get started with the Emotional Regulation for Gentle Parents webinar. Just going to share my screen. And so I'll get started with an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples as the custodians of the lands, waterways, and sky from where I am today. I pay respect to the past and present Ngunnawal and Ngambri elders. Now, one of the things that we can really help with when it comes to supporting the sovereignty of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is helping their children to be educated in their own language. So the work of the organization's Children's Ground is all about making sure that we set up early education and primary school education to help Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to actually receive and be educated in their own language. And this does a couple of things. It really strengthens the children's sense of identity and their connection to culture. It also helps preserve languages that are really struggling in the current scenario. And so if this is something that you would like to support, you can check out their work at childrensground.org.au, and there's lots of options for donations that you might be interested in. Or you could help by sharing their posts or, sharing their information with a friend that you think might be interested. So my name's Jodie Thornton, and I have four kids who are 26, 23, 11, and 9. So our older children, my husband's from his first marriage, and I met them when they were 5 and 8. And our younger two are ours together. And I have a granddaughter who's 3 years old, and it's a super cute age. We have a blended family. And so this is really how I got into this work, was that when our older children were younger, when I first came into the family, we had the general blended family, the standard blended family issues and challenges come up. And I went and saw psychologists and social workers along the way just to get some support and some help to make sure that I was really being responsive to what the kids needed. And look, it was helpful. Like each of them helped me to understand different things, about my own childhood or about how the kids, what the kids' perspectives were. But I didn't really feel like anyone was giving me the tools to actually help the kids to understand themselves, to be, healthy in how they communicate and build really strong relationships in the long term. And so I kept struggling with it and kept going on as I did. And then finally, over many years of trying lots of different things, I've kind of cobbled together lots of different pieces. And that then made me feel like I was confident that I was, raising them in a way that was aligned to my values. And then that meant that I wanted to share that with everybody else. I'm also healing the bossy / people pleaser pattern. So I kind of can alternate between feeling like, I need to be the one to tell everybody what to do versus, the tendency to just go around people pleasing, which is kind of, it's common in the culture, and particularly for those of us who are strong-willed children growing up to be strong-willed adults. Beautiful. So what we'll be doing today is we're going to learn a short process that over time will build your awareness of your emotions, develop your skills to respond in a healthy way to your feelings. Now, this will help you to improve your emotional regulation and reduce how often you end up being reactive with your kids. And look, for some of us, it's not actually being externally reactive. For some of us, it's actually shutting down on the inside, and this will help if that's your situation as well. So I'd love you to have a think about what have you tried already to stay regulated, because we're going to go through some examples of what I see as the most common things. And I want you to think about it from this lens of like, why is this not working already? I just want to make a note on emotional safety. So today we're going to work through an example together, and it's okay if you don't want to do it with us live. So there will be a recording sent out, and you can do it in your own time. And even when you listen to the recording, you don't have to do it along with me at the time. You can take your time and do it in your own examples. Now, if you do work with an example, whether that's through live with us here tonight, on the recording, or in your own time, I just want to make sure that you stay aware of how intense your feelings are. Because if we were working through this together, I would be able to support you if you were to get overwhelmed. And I'd also be able to support you to really make sure that we stay to a level of feeling that doesn't end you up in intense overwhelm. And so what we want to do is just make sure that you're taking ownership of that tonight. Because of the fact that we're in a group setting, I won't be able to support you personally if you get overwhelmed. So we just want to avoid that overwhelm in the first place. And the same goes for when you're doing this on the recording. We want to make sure that you don't end up in a situation where you're alone and not having direct support if you're in the really intense feelings. And for some people, this isn't a risk, but for other people, it is. And we just want to make sure that we're prioritizing emotional safety. Now, the reason I bring this up straight away is that sometimes even talking about this being dysregulated can bring up your feelings, and it can bring up memories of things that you wish you could take back and all these kinds of things, right? So I just wanted everyone to be aware from the beginning that if you're having intense feelings, we just want to, even before we get to the example, we just want to be aware of that. And a note on sharing, this is a zero judgment space. So if anyone shares anything at all in the chat box, it's really important that you don't comment anything critical or negative about other attendees' comments. If we fully understood the person's situation, we would understand exactly why it happened in that way. And we just want to make sure that it's okay for people to share what they would like to share without other people having responses that would make them feel uncomfortable. And part of the reason that's really important is that if we're going to stay regulated, we really need to deal with what our feelings are. And if certain feelings or certain actions are unacceptable, then we can't process them. And that's why we want to really have a zero judgment space. So if you share in the chat box, I will not read out any names or identifying details. And also, just so you know, the comments in the chat box won't be visible in the recording. So just so you're aware, you can choose to share under those conditions if you'd like to. So the most common strategies I see people using, and I've grouped them into headings. The first one being things that sometimes work but aren't enough for many people. And so that one being remembering that they're just children, right? They're just kids. They're not little adults. And that's fine. Like, it can be helpful, but it also, as I say, it just isn't enough for many people. Sometimes it can help you bring you back into the moment, but oftentimes it's just a distraction from what your genuine feelings are. Very similarly, they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time, same goes. Take a few deep breaths. Again, some people swear by it, but for many people, it's not enough. Accept it's going to happen and just focus on repair, right? You see so many people say, you can't be a perfect parent, right? You can't be a perfect parent, so just focus on repair. And I found that really upsetting when I was trying to learn, because I accept that I can't be perfect. Well, I struggle to even say that out loud, but I accept that I can't be perfect. But I could see other people could regulate better than I could. So why should I just accept that I am getting dysregulated and behaving in ways that I don't feel comfortable with, that I don't want my children to experience? Why should I accept that and focus on repair when clearly this is a skill that's available to other people in a way that it's not to me, right? Now, little did I know back then that a lot of people were not actually regulated. They were just better at pushing their feelings than me. But regardless, I still felt like it was really underselling the capacity I had to learn a new skill if only someone would teach me, rather than just say, look, if you can't do it, just focus on repair. This heading I called With Magic, I assume, because I don't when people say, just make time for yourself or find some quiet to really delve into. I know that that works for some people, and I know that some people can access that. But, in my case, I would say the hardest time for those things was when I had two teenagers and a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, where it just felt like all four of the children needed me at different times of the day. No one needed me at the same time of the day, but they all needed me at different times of the day. And there was no time for myself and there was no quiet because we just don't live in the villages that would be ideal to raise our children in. And so, and I also feel like for those people that can make time for themselves, it's often not enough, right? There's just so much stress and pressure in parenting that just having a break not necessarily enough to keep you regulated for the rest of the time. And then, as I say, like I find it absolutely infuriating when anyone tells me to lower my expectations of myself. And I understand that sometimes my expectations of myself are too high, and sometimes that makes it harder for me to achieve my goals than it would if I was more realistic. However, as I was saying earlier, it's like I could see other people could do it better than me. So why tell me to lower my expectations? And of course, side note, the reason is because they didn't know how to teach the skill. They just wanted me to relax, right? And I wanted to learn. And if you want to learn, you're in exactly the right place because that's what we're going to be focusing on. And now, um, if we really look at why do we need an approach that works, like why is it important? And there's so many things that parents will tell me. Obviously, we don't want our children to experience the behaviors that we are not comfortable with. We don't want them to have memories of things that are hurtful or upsetting. We don't want them to feel disconnected from us if we need to shut down or withdraw. There's all the obvious things, right? But I think the thing that really makes me focus on emotional regulation for gentle parents is the sheer amount of time lost in repeated repair, guilt, shame, and worry about the future. Like all that time we could be using for more skillful parenting. We could be using just for enjoying each other's company, for creating great memories, or like building, their sense of connection or their sense of themselves. Like there's so many things that we could be doing. And also we could be using that time for other aspects of your life outside of parenting. And I know that in some stages of parenting, it doesn't feel like there'll ever be time for that. But in other stages of parenting, it feels like it's all consuming when it shouldn't be, right? And so we really want to be thinking about like what are the impacts of just allowing this dysregulation to kind of it almost controls our lives because we don't know how to manage it. So it happens when it happens, and we just have to accept that, right? And so I think that's the piece where I think all that time we lose, and even just that feeling of powerlessness around it, if we can shift that, it makes such a difference to us and to our kids. Like it just really does. And I think that's the reason why I think this is a really good thing to get a handle on, and find a strategy that actually works rather than the ones that only work if, you remember to do it in the moment, or that only work if, you have the kind of supportive village that would allow you to have breaks, or, there's so many caveats that people will have around their strategies, right? And so the standard approaches all suck because they're all based on emotional suppression. They're all based on holding a beach ball underwater. And we can only do that for so long. So if we think about those ones where it's just like they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. Well, that's about what's going on for them. But does that change the feelings you have? I mean, for most of us, no. Like it's basically saying you shouldn't feel this way because they're having a hard time, right? And in some cases, when we take a moment to like really ground and go, okay, they're just having a hard time and I just need to be able to help them. For some times that is okay and it does address the feelings, but for a lot of times it doesn't. And I think this is really this thing about understanding that if we're telling us that we shouldn't feel the way that we feel, or that our feelings are um not matched to the situation, that's where you can see it's emotional suppression. And that's not emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is about having your feelings matched to the situation that you're in, not your feelings pretending as though you're not involved in the situation that's very, very stressful, right? And so if we look at what regulation in the moment means, when most people say regulation, what they mean is behave differently to how you feel on the inside. And that's that piece around it's not regulation, it's suppression. And stay calm is just as ridiculous to say to an adult as it is to say to a child. And the reason I say that is it's not like we don't want to be able to be calm. And it's not like we sometimes might not choose, like let me rephrase. Sometimes we may choose to push our feelings down because we would rather that than our children experience our feelings out of control. 100%. But saying stay calm assumes that you were calm, and it doesn't mean anything. Like you can't stay calm. You're either calm and behaving calm, or you're not calm, right? You're not calm, and you're trying your best to behave calm. And so instead of all of these things, what we want to be doing is taking action so that we are calm, and then your behavior will be calm. Now, if we look at this, I know this is a silly little meme that's gone around, but this is basically what the gentle parenting advice tells us to do. And so this is the meme where there's a dog in a hat sitting at a dining table on a dining chair. There's a coffee cup on the table. All around the dog is fires, and the dog has very wide eyes saying, "This is fine." Right. And that's how it really sounds to me when all the gentle parenting advice says you just need to be calm. You're supposed to look around and see all these fires and just say, "This is fine." And it's not fine, right? It really isn't. And like even if we look at like what's developmentally appropriate behavior and all of these reasons, you're having feelings for a reason, right? And we need to understand what is that reason rather than pretend those feelings don't exist. And what we want to do instead is, this is another meme that I've seen where that same dog in the same hat is actually standing up in the house that's on fire, and he is told, let's not use gendered language, we do not know who this dog is, but the dog is using a fire extinguisher to put the flames out, and the caption is, "It's not fine and you have a responsibility to act." And this is what you already believe, right? You know that you want to be acting. The problem is it's not working. And so if you think about it, it's like your fire extinguisher is supposed to contain the skills to address the problems, but we didn't get taught those skills. And so you're standing there going, "This is not okay. I want to be able to do something better than this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or maybe I know what I'm supposed to do and I don't know how. All I know is I don't have the skills that would make it possible for me to address these fires, right? And this is what we want to be able to do." So when I talk about children's regulation, you might have heard me say that the first thing we want to do is get in with proactive regulation. So we're looking at finding ways to help your children get back to a regulated state from a stressful situation. And when we do proactive regulation, it's like they're holding on to feelings that have not been processed. And so by doing the regulation strategies, they're releasing those unprocessed feelings. It's like that we're not stopping the new feelings come in, but we're just giving ourselves a fresh start, right? Now, the reason this works for kids is that they're not then experiencing the stress immediately, right? So if they offload the unprocessed feelings, then they're calm, right? Until the next thing happens, and then the unprocessed feelings build up, right? So we need to be able to process the feelings in the moment. But the reason that this isn't where I start with parents is that the unprocessed feelings aren't the main problem. The main problem is a current situation for which your feelings are valid. If your child is tantruming for 4 hours and you don't know how to help them regulate, the feelings you have about that are valid, right? If your child is not listening, and we're at a place where it's yes, it's developmentally appropriate for children, not to be able to comply with being told what to do, but at the same time, that based on the age and stage that they're at, based on their personality, it wouldn't have to be this hard all the time, right? If you know that, and someone just says to you, "Don't worry, just be calm, just be okay with it, it's fine," you know it's not fine. Your feelings about that are valid. Your feelings about your child's ability to work together as a team and build the skills to be able to be considerate of each other without acquiescing, without people pleasing, just to be able to get on together and work as a team. If that's not happening for you, the feelings you have about that are valid. And anything we try and say to say, like, you shouldn't feel that way, we're just going back to emotional suppression. You're only going to be able to hold the beach ball underwater for so long, and it's going to come up. And so then a lot of people will think, like, isn't it old baggage? Like, isn't it the things that I'm carrying, that are my own overreactions? And it's like, kind of. So what if we look at what really happens? If something happens and you have feelings about it, those feelings are telling you about your unmet needs. If you take action to meet that need, you'll stay regulated. If you can't solve the need, then we're at risk of the baggage taking over. So that's what happens is, like, if you, let's say we look at your child's not listening. So if your child is old enough to be able to put their toys away, and you've asked them to put their toys away 7 times and it just isn't working and they're just refusing to cooperate, if you knew how to respond to your child's unwillingness to cooperate in a way that was healthy, that respected their stage of development, that respected their autonomy, that encouraged them and inspired them to work as a team, you wouldn't have a dysregulation issue. Now, if that same situation happens, but you don't know how to respond to it, your nervous system then goes looking for other times when this happened, like this happened before. So, like, I feel unheard, or I feel like I don't matter, I feel unimportant. So your nervous system goes looking for the other times that are just like this, and then you find the escalation of your feelings. So the feelings might be reasonably intense in the first place, but the intense escalation happens is when you're stuck, when you do not know what to do next. That's when your nervous system goes looking for, what is this like from my past? And then it feels like, well, now either we end up in like powerlessness because we feel like this is never going to be solved, or it's just like bringing back those feelings about those other times where you felt unheard, unimportant, unseen, whatever specific experience that was related to for you. And so you can see that, like, sort of it's our baggage, but really it's about the skills to respond to what's happening in the moment. And so if there's a fire, what should happen is that you grab your empty fire, or so you what happens is you grab your fire extinguisher. But when you realize it's empty, we have one of two things happen. One is that you have feelings about the fire extinguisher being empty. So it's like, God, I wish I knew how to handle this. I wish I knew how to help my child come down from a tantrum. Now, if you have reached your unprocessed feelings limit, you will get dysregulated and reactive just from that, right? Now, the other thing that can happen is when you notice your fire extinguisher is empty, your nervous system remembers the other times, and then you get reactive, right? So it can kind of go down 2 paths. So we have option 1, we increase your unprocessed feelings limit so that you can cope with all the fires without getting reactive. Now, of course, this is emotional suppression. This is what I've been saying for all of these examples. And you can only hold the beach ball underwater for so long. Now, this achieves only one parenting goal, which is to stop being reactive with your children. It doesn't achieve your goals around teaching your child to be considerate, but not a people pleaser, how to handle their emotion, how to enjoy spending time together, and on and on and on we go, right? Like, if we improve your ability to cope with big feelings, all we do is stop you being reactive. We do not get a chance to be more attuned to your child, to build a deeper relationship, to create better memories. Like, all of these things are not available to us if we're just getting better at coping with feelings. Option 2, we process all the times from your past so that you don't get reactive. So this is the idea that when your nervous system feels stuck and it goes looking for, like, what are the times that were like this in the past. Now, if we process all of those past experiences, right, we process all the times that you had big feelings and you didn't have anyone who could help you to process how you felt and make sense of it and move forward from it, we could go back and do all of that work. But the first thing would say, how long would that take, right? Like, how long would it really take to process all those old experiences? And then the second thing is it doesn't achieve your other parenting goals, because ultimately you're going to create new unprocessed feelings if you are still stuck, not able to actually respond to the moment that's happening. Like ultimately, it still doesn't get us to a place where you're attuned, where you're creating those good memories, where you're teaching your child the skills that they need to be able to process their feelings. Like all of that is still not achieved. Option three is we fill your fire extinguisher with the skills to recognize, understand, and respond to your feelings, right? Like this is the stuff that we should have all been raised with if the culture we were in were healthy. And just to be clear, although, yes, a lot of our programming around how we handle feelings comes from our parents or caregivers, at that, while that's true, it is all of the unhealthy aspects of how, or the lack of skills of how we process feeling are reinforced at every turn in the culture. So in our workplaces, in the school system, in any other communities, when we have this culture which is basically not emotionally aware, although yes, many of us have experiences in our own childhoods, those experiences were reinforced consistently by this culture. And if we had a healthy culture, it would have at least weakened those programs and at least started to help you build those skills. But because our culture is so lacking in skills around emotional awareness, that's why there's this consistent focus on, what we did and didn't learn as kids. Well, we could have learned that at school or in our workplaces or, various, and in our connections in community. But of course, the culture is not there yet. So we are going to go into the example. So this is where I want you to choose an example that is not very intense. So something that you'd feel comfortable saying to somebody who, you have a reasonable assumption that they wouldn't judge you, but you don't feel 100% confident in the relationship. And the reason I'd say that kind of example is just something that, you are comfortable to kind of explore without feeling any intense feelings about yourself. So, and just a reminder before we get started, if at any time your feelings get too intense, you can stop, you can distract yourself, you can bring yourself back into the present, like looking at can I see 5 red things? What are the different textures in the room? What can I smell? Any of those kind of bringing you back to the present moment kind of strategies to bring yourself back. So we're going to choose an example. And I want you to choose an example where you got reactive and you're not comfortable with it. But I want you to think about what was the first moment that something was off track for you or for your child. Okay. So is it the first moment that your child says, no, I'm not going to pick up my toys? Is it the first moment that you didn't get enough sleep? And so then it made the day, you knew already the day was going to be harder. Like, what is that first moment that things were off track? And part of what this is building is the skill to be aware of your feelings, right? This is the emotional awareness piece. And if it's your child, that's the person who has the first sign something's off track, you're helping to become aware of their feelings so that you can teach them to become aware of their own feelings. Now we're looking for, what was the sign? Was it a tone of voice? Was it a sensation in your body? Was it a particular phrasing of something that's not their usual phrasing of something? Like, what is the sign that something's off track? And then I want you to describe it as a present problem. So I asked my child to pick up his toys. He refused, and it was really annoying to me. I needed the toys picked up. Right. So something that's like just this one moment. So not the whole story, but that one moment where something was off track. What is the present problem? Now, in that moment, I want you to think about what were your child's needs and what were your needs. And this is the part that might be tricky. So we're learning how to not just be aware of our feelings, we're learning to understand what are our feelings telling us about our needs. So the feelings that we call positive feelings are the ones that tell us our needs are met. The feelings that we call negative feelings are the ones that are telling us that our needs are unmet. right? And so we want to look for what were your child's needs, what were your needs? Was it connection? Was it autonomy? Was it peace? Was it ease? Was it consideration? Like what were the needs that were at play? Right. And then what could you have done that would meet everyone's needs? Now, in this case, you might not like it takes practice. It takes practice to figure out what the needs are, but it also takes practice to figure out what is the solution. And so often when I'm talking to parents, they'll be like, well, we couldn't do anything because of X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, well, what about what about A, B, C, D, and E? Could we do any of those? And so often it's just that they're so close to it. So it's being so close you can't see the forest for the trees. It's also that we are like we've reinforced and reinforced and reinforced the neural pathways of what is and isn't possible for us. And so having like you just don't think creatively when you're like, this is just how it has to be, right? And so we're just taking a moment, and we don't have to get all the way to a solution every time. We just want to take a moment to think, is there anything we could have done that would have met everybody's needs? Anything we could have done? And if there's nothing, we want to validate everyone's feelings and needs. If there's no solution, it doesn't change the fact that every person's feelings and needs in the situation were valid. And then once we've validated everyone's feelings and needs, what is the best decision you could have made in the moment? So often I'll say, if you can stay regulated, we want to prioritize the needs of your child because they're younger, because it's patterning them in, and like it's building their patterns around their associations with their needs as much as we can. But if you're going to lose your cool, then we're better off to prioritize your needs, because the more you're reactive, the more that dysregulates your child, the more repair you have to do, right. So we want to just go, what is the best decision we can make in that moment? And then we want to, in our minds, do a do-over of exactly what we would have done. So once we've thought, okay, this is what my child's needs were, this is what my needs were. In the case where I have a solution that I could have used, or I don't, what do I wish I had done? And I'm talking about specifically, what are the words you wish you would have said? What's the tone of voice you wish you had used? Or what is the body language you wish you had expressed? And specifically, what do you wish you had done? Because when we move through the thought process of specifically what we wish we would have done, it builds the neural pathways almost as well as if you'd done it that way in the moment. Right? And so what it helps is that we strengthen the neural pathways of finding a solution, and we atrophy the neural pathways of just getting stuck and powerless and reactive, right? We allow those neural pathways to wither and die, and we strengthen and build new neural pathways for, if something's off track, I'm going to notice. If something's off track, I'm going to figure out what are my child's needs and what are my needs. If something's off track, once I've figured out everybody's needs, I'm going to think about what could we do right now. If I can't solve it, I'm going to validate everybody's feelings and needs, right? And I'm just going to make the best decision I can. We're building up those neural pathways, and the more we build those neural pathways, the more those options are available to you in the moment when it happens. So when do we do this? So we want to get to the point where that whole process happens in the moment most of the time. So for me now, for a lot of day-to-day moments, that just happens automatically. It's just my default. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So it might be that I'm distracted or tired, or who knows, something might happen. And that's okay. I don't need to be perfect, which again, hard for me to say out loud, but I don't need to be perfect at it. But what happens is when I notice something is getting off track, and even if I don't pick it up at the first point, whenever I do pick it up, I go back to that process. And because I've done it so many times now, it's easy for me to do it in the moment. It's not something I have to remember. I don't even have to remember the steps. It just happens. that's not going to be your experience when you're very first starting out, right? It's slow going when you're learning, and you may not see things coming, and like you just may not remember all the steps in the moment, right? And even if you remember all the steps, you might not be able to figure out what am I really feeling, what are my needs, what are my child's needs, what's the solution. Like those are big questions sometimes. Like sometimes they're simple, but sometimes they're big questions, right? And so if we can't, what when we're in that stage, I don't actually recommend doing it at every moment of every day. It can be hard work. If you would like to, by all means, go ahead. But I think an easier way to do it when you're learning is just to do it once per day. And then you're just building those neural pathways. We're just making a deposit on building those neural pathways every day. Now, if you do it at the first hour or the last hour of the day, so the first hour after you wake up or the last hour before you go to bed, that's when your brain is most programmable, right? That's the time where your neural pathways are most able to adjust and change and shift and learn and grow. Having said that, done is better than not. So if for some reason like your first hour and last hour are just not practical, or you forget, it's better for you to do it at lunchtime than it is to just skip a day, right? If you just try and get into the habit of doing it once a day, then we'll be able to build those neural pathways. Now, daily is ideal. So when I very first started doing this, and actually I come back to this process whenever I find I'm getting stuck somewhere and it's not working for me. But so whenever I'm doing this process, I will plan to do it both the first hour of the day and the last hour of the day. And knowing that one of those will probably fall off, and I just make sure if I don't do the night one, I make sure I do the next morning or vice versa, right? So I kind of plan to do both, but then I accept that the imperfection means I'll average once a day. So daily is ideal, but even if you can't do it daily, every time you do it, you're strengthening those neural connections and atrophying the old patterns. So anytime you can do it is good. We want to take good over perfect. So now you can see this isn't a quick fix, right? Like it's not like I'm saying to you, like a great way to regulate in the moment is just to like, take 3 deep breaths and 2 sips of water or whatever. But based on what we're talking about, you can see that those things actually aren't regulation, right? It's a little reset, sure, but it's probably not getting you back into attunement, probably not getting you back into being open and creative and being able to see what's really going on and what options might work for you and your kids. And so I want you to notice that like every step forward you take will make things just a little bit easier. And even when you're not yet able to do it in the moment, you'll see efficiency coming from each person. So for you and each of your children, you only have 2 or 3 common needs and that are like the most important to you. And so as you get to know, like, okay, these are my most common needs, then when something comes up, it's like, well, is it one of those 3? Like, can we just start there? And often, yes. And it's the same, as I say, it's like just not just for us as adults, but for the kids as well. And those common needs are either things that are the most persistently unmet right now, or they're just the things that are the most important to you as an individual. Also, the more times you find solutions that work, the more options you have in future to choose from. So you like, that, oh, this worked that other time. And also just the process of like attempting to find solutions builds the muscle to get better at finding solutions, right? And the more confident you get with just making the best decision you can in the moment, the less reactive you'll be. So it's like, okay, this is not working. The best decision I can make is this, and that's what I'm going to do. And that makes it much easier for you to stay relatively regulated. And so you'll spend less time in repair, guilt, and shame. If you have any questions, please do email me. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to talk through anything that's come up from today. Anything about the process or how you would apply it. I'd love to hear from you. So can you see, it's a heck of a lot faster if someone can help you to identify your own feelings and needs, to identify your child's feelings and needs, figuring out solutions that work for everyone. Like that thing about, you're too close and you just can't see it. And sometimes just having someone external, they can see options that you can't. And I've been helping families with this now for 8 years. And so I'm pretty efficient at both finding feelings and needs and solutions. And the other thing that I can help you with is learning the skills to help your child regulate, to get them to listen, to help them to get along with their siblings or their other parent. Like all these things, like if we look at sometimes the root cause is actually, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, right? It's not just about making a decision in the moment. There's actually some skills there that need to be built, like your skills to guide them through that issue, and maybe their skills to handle their feelings or to be able to cooperate without acquiescing, and be considerate without acquiescing, right? And relationship skills, to be able to not bicker with their siblings constantly, or to be able to get along with the other parent who, maybe they're clashing because they have the same personality, or maybe they struggle to understand each other because they're so different, right? Those are skills that like you can build to support your child, and also that your child can build within themselves. So I would love to do this together. And if you would like to, over 4 weeks together, we can help you recognize your feelings when they're whispers. And so rather than waiting until you're dysregulated, it gives you more ability to take action and more workable options. I can help you to identify your most common feelings and needs, as well as your child's. We can find solutions together for those most common tricky spots. So over 4 weeks, we can really look at the most common times where things go badly. What can we do to make a shift there to make sure that everybody can stay regulated? We can also create a realistic plan B for the times where you do not have a solution that works. And you still need to be able to at least minimize your reactivity, or at least maximize your attunement in the moment, if not be able to stay regulated. So that's over 4 weeks together, we could do that with support. So that would be 4 sessions over Zoom, which are each 45 minutes, about a week apart is ideal if you can. And for tonight's webinar, I've released 5 spaces at just $197. So usually it's $197 for a session, but in this special, we're having 4 sessions for just $197, because I'd really like to help as many parents as I can to be able to get these regulation skills working for them. So over the 4 weeks, you can expect to lose your cool far less often. You'll be more attuned to what your children really need, and more open and creative in finding solutions that work for everyone. You'll be able to let go of a lot of the shame or guilt or worry, any of those feelings that you have about the behaviors that you do when you're dysregulated that you could take back, that you wish you could take back. And the other thing that over the 4 weeks, you'll find that I'll be able to show you why your feelings are valid and why the behavior you're having makes sense, and also show you your capacity to shift it, which actually will mean that you can have more compassion for yourself, which in turn makes you more objective, which then means you'll be able to improve your own parenting independently, because you'll be able to really be more in tune with what's going on in reality, rather than your judgment of yourself and your fears about the future and what impact that's going to have on your children. The more you can have that compassionate and objective perspective, the more you'll be able to make changes that mean that you're parenting more in alignment with your own values. You'll just be able to do that of your own accord. So I hope this has been really helpful, and I'd really love to do this together. And if you'd like to grab that package, it's $197, and you can access that by sending me an email, and I'll send you an invoice and we'll get started. Thank you so much for coming along.